the longest book on the topic of fly fishing. We'll talk about it today on Casting Across. Hi, I'm Matthew of castingacross.com, where I explore the quarry and culture of fly fishing. Now, bigger isn't necessarily better. Just because a book is long doesn't mean that it's worth reading. But in the case of the title that we're talking about today, it is absolutely true that the largest work on fly fishing is a classic of angling literature. And of course, I'm talking about Ernest Schwiebert's Trout, a massive 1,700 plus page 2-volume tome. This is such a large book. I'm not going to be my usual graceful self when wielding these double hardback editions. This is the 1984, which is the second printing. It came out in 1978. And this is Mr. Schwiebert himself, Ernest, or Ernie to friends. And he put this book out. And as we'll see, it covers a lot of water, pardon the pun. So 2 volumes. Real quick, I'll tell you kind of a little bit about the man himself. So Schwiebert was born at the beginning of the 20th century, and he was an architect by trade. He was involved in a lot of the fledgling movements that became some of the most prominent angling and conservation organizations in the country. Federation of Fly Fishers, Trout Unlimited, Theodore Gordon, Atlantic Salmon Foundation, on and on and on. Again, architect by trade, which means that he had an eye for aesthetics. So the drawings, hundreds of them in this book, Trout, were done by Schwiebert himself. This book, every time you turn a page, you see more just really fascinating artwork by Schwiebert. This is an Atlantic salmon covering both of the pages. But generally speaking, we're talking about words. Lots and lots and lots of words. Real quick, I'll tell you what is in these volumes. So 1,700 pages in between the two. We'll talk about the appendices at the end, because there's actually a really, really valuable thing. The history of fly fishing. Then he talks about species of the main targets of fly fishers, particularly here in the United States. Talks about where trout live. Talks about tackle. And again, this is from the perspective of the middle of the 20th century. This second edition actually talks about an update. So he has a whole section in the second volume about the advancements in graphite rods, which is interesting. It talks about casting and weighting, which again, a good writer is able to write about casting in a way that is entertaining. And Schwiebert talks about casting and bugs and weighting in ways that are entertaining. He then talks about how to fish, strategies, and for how to actually get out there and chase fish. So I'll be honest with you, this is one of those books that I have not read cover to cover. I'm not that I'm scared of it. I just haven't. I've used it as a reference. I've used it as a resource. And there's just so much there. So I mentioned that it is a resource before. We have indices in the back of this book. One of my biggest gripes with a big book, and I've got some of them here, some fantastic 17th century reprints and with updates even in them, and they don't have indices. They don't have a single index, which drives me pretty bonkers once you get over that 200 page range. But here we have, first and foremost, a bibliography that goes on for days, okay? And so that is phenomenal. If you're interested in doing research, you're interested in trying to find out more information at mid-20th century angling, and of course, back into the annals of angling history. It's all here. I'm not gonna say the book is worth the price just for the bibliography alone, but it's incredibly important. And if you do want to use this book as a resource, there is an author and title index, as well as a subject index. And again, it is voluminous. To me, as somebody who likes to do research, as somebody who likes to kind of use certain works as a springboard to other works, this is incredibly helpful and I would say vital for a work of this size. But really, Schwiebert is a great writer. He was a important figure in the middle of the 20th century in fly fishing, and he was an important figure in angling literature. He had other books that may have been more prominent, certainly more accessible, but this 2-volume set of Trout is definitely worth pursuing and worth picking up. Now, it is not always easy to find at a reasonable price. I actually landed my copy when a Trout Unlimited chapter was doing a raffle. And so my winning bid was something like $60. You can find cheaper copies. You might not get the slipcover. Mine's not in great shape. And again, this is for the second edition. If you're willing to spend upwards of $100, you can easily find just the books. If you're looking for a first edition or a signed first edition, you're going to be laying out a lot of money. But this is a great set of books to have if you like to consider yourself a reader of angling literature, if a student of fly fishing history. If you are just getting started, don't feel like this is a book set you have to have. If collecting fly fishing works is something that you want to do, then looking for a first edition is absolutely a wonderful task that might take some time and probably a little bit of an outlay of money. There's so much here. I've only scratched the surface, but it's been a relatively long video already. I highly recommend that if you come across this, that you pick it up and that you read it bit by bit. You don't necessarily sit down and challenge yourself with starting on page 1 and going to page 1700. That's a lot of angling information. But if you're going to be reading a nearly 2,000-page book on fly fishing, Schwiebert's probably about as good as you could do from an author's perspective. So we could talk more about other works of Schwiebert's. We could talk more about some of the things that are in a Trout, both the literature and the illustrations, his perspective on things. But I'll leave that for you to do. There's a lot in there. Well, head over to castingacross.com, where there's 3 posts a week on the people, place, and things that go to the pursuit of fish.